It is a damp Tuesday afternoon in Haarlem, 1943. The sky is a bruised purple, hanging low over the canals. Down the cobblestone street, a bicycle clicks rhythmically, the only sound in a city holding its breath. The rider is small, a girl, barely 14 years old, with ribbons woven tightly into her dark braids. She looks like a schoolgirl rushing home to her mother before the strict 8 p.m. curfew. A German officer, standing guard by a requisition storefront, watches her approach. He relaxes his grip on his MP-40 submachine gun. He smiles. To him, she is the very picture of harmlessness, a fragile piece of the conquered scenery. He does not see the cold, dead weight of calculation in her eyes. He does not know that beneath the heavy wool coat tucked inside the bicycle basket under a rucksack rests a loaded FN model 1910 pistol. She nods to him, pedals past, and vanishes into the grey fog. She is not going home to play. She is going to kill a man. This is the reality of Freddie Oversteegen, the teenager who turned the symbols of childhood into the ultimate camouflage for assassination. May 9th, 1940. The Netherlands is a ghost walking. For months, the Dutch government has clung to a desperate, fragile hope of neutrality. They watched the fires consume Poland. They watched the Wehrmacht mobilize on the borders. But they held to the belief that the Great War of 20 years ago had taught the world to leave the Low Countries alone. On the streets of Haarlem and Amsterdam, citizens ride their bicycles. Markets bustle with the sale of tulips and cheese, and the newspapers speak cautiously of diplomacy. It is a calm facade. Underneath, the military is mobilizing, flooding the defensive waterlines, hoping the ancient tactic of turning the country into an island will stop modern tanks. It does not. At 3:55 a.m. on May 10th, the sky over the Netherlands ceases to be a ceiling and becomes a highway for the Luftwaffe. The roar is not a distant rumble. It is a physical vibration that rattles the window panes of every home from Groningen to Maastricht. German Heinkel 111 bombers cross the border, indifferent to the neutrality declarations. Behind them come the Junkers Ju-52 transports, dropping thousands of Fallschirmjäger, German paratroopers, deep behind Dutch lines. This is not a border skirmish. This is the first large-scale airborne invasion in history. The Dutch army fights with a ferocity that surprises the German high command. At the Grebbeberg, ill-equipped Dutch soldiers hold the line against SS regiments, turning the hillside into a slaughterhouse. For 5 days, the small nation holds its breath, fighting a frantic, multi-directional war against an enemy that seems to be everywhere at once. But courage cannot stop mathematics. The German war machine is built on speed and air superiority. The Dutch defenses are built on flooding fields and World War I logic. Then comes the ultimatum. To force an immediate surrender, the Luftwaffe targets Rotterdam. On May 14th, the heart of the port city is obliterated. 97 tons of high-explosive bombs rain down on the medieval center. The fires burn so hot and so fast that the oxygen is sucked out of the streets. 800 civilians die in minutes. 80,000 are left homeless. The black smoke from Rotterdam drifts north, visible from miles away, a dark pillar signaling the end of the world as the Dutch know it. General Henry Winkelmann, the Dutch commander-in-chief, realizes that Utrecht is next. To save the civilians, he capitulates. The silence that follows the surrender is heavier than the shelling. Almost overnight, the visual texture of the Netherlands changes. The familiar blue uniforms of the Dutch police are overshadowed by the Feldgrau, the field grey of the German occupiers. Large banners of red, white, and black unfurl over town halls and train stations. the swastika becomes a permanent fixture of the skyline. In Haarlem, the change is insidious. At first, the Germans are polite. They pay for their coffee. They offer chocolate to children. They hold concerts in the town square. This is the velvet glove phase of the occupation, a strategic attempt to woo the Germanic Dutch people into the fold of the Third Reich. But the glove conceals an iron hand that begins to tighten around the throat of the country. Within months, the Aryanization begins. Jewish professors are dismissed from universities. Cinemas and parks are segregated. The Sicherheitsdienst, the intelligence agency of the SS, sets up headquarters in unsuspecting villas. The Dutch National Socialist Movement, the NSB, previously a fringe group of political outcasts, suddenly finds itself empowered. Their members, clad in black shirts, strut through the streets of Haarlem, acting as the eyes and ears of the occupiers. They are neighbors turning on neighbors. For the vast majority of the Dutch population, the reaction is a paralyzed shock. They adopt a strategy of accommodation. Keep your head down, do your job, survive. They wear pins of the royal family under their lapels, a quiet rebellion. But for a select few, accommodation is not an option. In the working class neighborhoods, particularly among the communists and socialists who had been watching the rise of fascism in Spain and Germany for years, the war did not begin in 1940. It had been raging for a decade. They know what the Nazis are. They know the polite soldiers offering chocolate are the vanguard of a genocide. In the Oversteegen household, the atmosphere is electric with this knowledge. This is not a home of passive observers. Trine Oversteegen, a single mother raising 2 daughters. Truus, 16, and Freddie, 14, is a staunch communist. Their home is already a sanctuary for refugees who had fled Germany in the 1930s. The girls grew up sleeping on makeshift beds so that Jewish refugees or political dissidents could take the mattresses. They were raised on stories of injustice and the moral obligation to fight it. As the occupation settles in, the Oversteegen house transforms. It ceases to be merely a home and becomes a production center for dissent. They paste anti-Nazi posters over German proclamations. They distribute illegal newsletters known as the underground press, whispering the truth that the German-controlled radio tries to silence. But paper and glue are not enough to stop the SS. The resistance leadership in Haarlem realizes that the war has shifted. It is no longer about armies on a battlefield. It is about terror, intelligence, and liquidation. To fight this war, they do not need soldiers who look like soldiers. They need operatives who are invisible. They need weapons that the Germans will never see coming. And in the autumn of 1941, the commander of the Haarlem Council of Resistance, Frans van der Wiel, knocks on the door of the Oversteegen home with a proposal that will shatter their innocence forever. The knock on the door is a sound that every Dutch citizen has learned to dread. By 1941, a heavy knock usually means the Grüne Polizei are outside to drag a father to a labor camp, or the SD is there to search for a hidden radio. But when the knock comes to the Oversteegen house on a quiet evening, it is not the heavy thud of a rifle butt. It is the rhythmic, deliberate signal of the underground. The man standing on the doorstep is Frans van der Wiel. To the casual observer, van der Wiel is unremarkable. But in the shadows of Haarlem, he is a gravity well. He is the commander of the Raad van Verzet, the Council of Resistance. Unlike other resistance groups that focus on intelligence gathering or hiding down Allied pilots, the RVV is militant. They are the saboteurs, the arsonists, the ones willing to meet violence with violence. They do not believe in waiting for the British or the Americans to save them. They believe in bleeding the occupier here, now, and daily. He enters the small living room, the air thick with the smell of cheap tobacco and tension. He sits down across from Freddie Oversteegen and her two daughters. Freddie is 14 years old, a child with dimples and long braids, still playing with dolls in the corner of her room. Truus is 16, slightly more worldly, but still a teenager. Van der Wiel does not mince words, yet he speaks in the coded language of the time. He looks at Train. He knows her history. He knows her loyalty to the communist cause is ironclad. But what he is about to ask violates every instinct of maternal protection. "We need help," he says. "Not the kind you are used to. The strategic reality of the resistance has hit a wall. The Germans are efficient. They have tightened the net around the cities. Checkpoints are everywhere. Every male between the ages of 18 and 45 is a target for the Arbeitseinsatz, forced labor in German factories. Men cannot move freely. If a man walks down the street with a heavy bag, he is stopped. If a man loiters near a bridge, he is questioned. The resistance is losing its mobility. They have the weapons, they have the targets, but they cannot close the distance. They need a delivery system that the Nazis will not recognize. They need camouflage that is so perfect, so disarming, that an SS officer will open the gate for it." Van der Wiel turns his eyes to the girls. "We need someone who won't be suspected," he tells them. "Someone who can move through the checkpoints." Freddie and Truus nod eagerly. To them, this sounds like an extension of what they are already doing, distributing the Wahrheit newspaper, or perhaps acting as couriers for messages. They imagine the thrill of secret notes and hidden flags. They say yes immediately. It is the yes of youth, brave, quick, and oblivious to the consequences. Then Van der Wiel shifts the tone. He clarifies the mission. This is not about paper. It is not about messages. "You will be trained to use weapons," he says. "You will be trained to sabotage bridges and rail lines. And you will be trained to liquidate." The word hangs in the room. Liquidation. The targeted killing of German officers and Dutch collaborators who are too dangerous to be left alive. It is a moment of profound historical anomaly. In almost every other theater of World War II, children are victims or bystanders. In the Soviet Union, they are partisans out of desperation. In Germany, they are conscripted into the Volkssturm at the very end. But here, in a civilized Dutch living room, a commander is recruiting a 14-year-old girl to be a professional assassin. He explains the logic. A German soldier looks at a man and sees a threat. He looks at a woman and sees a prize. He looks at a child and sees nothing. Freddie Oversteegen looks at her daughters. She knows that if she agrees, she is likely signing their death warrants. If they are caught, there will be no trial. They will be tortured at the detention center on the Amstelvenseweg, and then executed in the dunes. But she also knows the alternative, a world where men like the Nazis rule forever. She gives her consent. The pact is made. Freddie and Truus are sworn in. There are 7 rules of the RVV, but the most important one is silence. They can tell no one, not their friends at school, not their cousins. They must live a double life. By day, they are innocent sisters riding their bikes through Harlem. By night, or in the quiet hours of the afternoon, they are operatives of a paramilitary cell. The training begins almost immediately. It is not basic training in a boot camp. It is ad hoc, brutal, and practical. They are taught how to strip and clean a pistol in the dark. They are taught the anatomy of a bridge, where to place the dynamite to break the spine of the structure. They are taught how to spot a tail, how to memorize a license plate in a single glance, and how to lie to a Gestapo interrogator without blinking. But the most important tool they are given is not a gun. It is not a stick of dynamite. It is the one object they already own, the object that defines Dutch life. The bicycle. In the hands of the Oversteegen sisters, this simple machine is about to be transformed into a terrifying instrument of war. It will become their tank, their getaway car, and their Trojan horse. The phase of passive resistance is over. The girl with the braids is now a soldier, and the streets of Haarlem are her battlefield. To understand how two teenage girls could dismantle a sophisticated military occupation, one must first understand their primary tool. It was not the Sten gun or the FN pistol. It was the bicycle. In the Netherlands, the bicycle is ubiquitous. It is the great equalizer, ridden by princes and paupers alike. To the German occupiers, a bicycle was part of the background noise, static. They did not see it as a vehicle of war. This was their fatal error. For Freddie Oversteegen, the bicycle is a feat of engineering and acting. She is small, physically shorter than her sister, which means she has to pedal harder to maintain speed, especially when her bicycle frame is packed with contraband. The sisters develop a specific tactical doctrine for the bicycle. It is their mule. Underneath the saddle, taped to the frame, or hidden in saddlebags beneath unassuming groceries, they transport the lifeblood of the resistance. Illegal newspapers, forged identity papers, and weapons. But the bicycle is also their attack vehicle. They perfect the art of the drive-by before the term exists. They learn to cycle in tandem, creating a moving wall. When scouting a target, perhaps an NSB collaborator, stepping out of his office, they can slow down, seemingly wobbling or adjusting a skirt, while their eyes memorize the security detail, the exit routes, and the shift changes. If they are stopped, the bicycle offers a prop for performance. Freddie knows exactly how to play the role. She dismounts clumsily. She apologizes profusely. She leans on the handlebars, looking up with wide, frightened eyes at the German sentry. The bicycle makes her look smaller, more vulnerable. It disarms the soldier's aggression. While he checks her papers, his eyes gloss over the basket, where a revolver is wrapped in a knitted scarf. The moment he waves her through, she is back on the pedals, the adrenaline dumping into her bloodstream as she disappears around the corner. While the bicycle is the method of transport, the lure is the method of engagement. This is the darkest, most psychologically demanding aspect of their war. It is the angle that will haunt Freddie for the rest of her life. The resistance identifies high-value targets, SS officers or high-ranking Dutch collaborators who are too well guarded to be shot in the street. These men are often stationed in the forests surrounding Haarlem, secluded villas commandeered for the officers. These men are lonely. They are arrogant. They believe they have conquered the country and its women. Freddie and Truus are sent to the bars and cafes frequented by these officers. They are the bait. The strategy is terrifyingly simple. The sisters, dressed in their best coats, with their hair done up, walk into a bar. They order a drink. They sit and wait. It doesn't take long. A German officer approaches. He offers a cigarette. He offers a drink. The sisters play the part. They smile, they giggle, they feign interest in his stories of the fatherland. They suggest a walk. It is too loud in here, one might say. Let us go for a stroll in the woods. The officer, thinking he has secured a romantic conquest, agrees. He follows them out. They walk towards the forest edge, the conversation light, the air crisp. The officer relaxes. He leaves his guard down. He is focused on the girl, not the shadows of the trees. As they enter the designated kill zone, a secluded path or a clearing, the dynamic shifts in a heartbeat. Sometimes the sisters are the ones to draw the weapon. A hand slips into a pocket, not for a handkerchief, but for a pistol. 2 shots. Center mass. Other times they are the shepherds. They lead the target to a specific tree or a bend in the road where the male resistance fighters are lying in wait. Is this the place? The officer might ask, expecting a kiss. Yes, Freddie answers. This is the place. At that signal, the ambush is sprung. The resistance fighters emerge. The officer is liquidated instantly. The girls do not run screaming. They stand witness. Then they smooth their skirts, retrieve their bicycles from the bushes, and pedal home before the curfew, leaving a corpse cooling in the Dutch mud. They wash the smell of German tobacco out of their hair and sit down to dinner with their mother. The silence of the woods locked tight inside their chests. For the first years of the war, Freddie and Truus operate as a binary unit, 2 sisters against an empire. But in 1943, the dynamic shifts. They are joined by a third operative, a figure who will become the most famous female resistance fighter in the Netherlands, Jannetje Johanna Schaft, known simply as Hannie Schaft. Hannie is different. She is older, 19, a law student with fiery red hair and a fierce intellect. She comes from a world of academia, not the working-class streets of the Oversteegens. When she joins the resistance, she is eager but raw. In a reversal of the natural order, it is the 14-year-old Freddie who becomes the mentor. Freddie teaches the law student how to look at a street and see a battlefield. She teaches her how to hide fear behind a smile. Together they form a legendary trio. The Germans call Hannie das Mädchen mit dem roten Haar, the girl with the red hair. She becomes the face of the resistance, a target of obsession for the Gestapo. But Freddie and Truus remain the ghosts. They are the ones who secure the perimeter, who scout the routes, who pull the trigger when the moment demands it. The bond between them is forged in trauma. They sleep in the same safe houses, share the same meager rations of tulip bulbs during the hunger winter, and clean each other's weapons. They cannot speak of their work to their mothers or their former friends. They only have each other. When they cycle 3 abreast down the road, wind blowing through their hair, they look like friends on an outing. In reality, they are a mobile kill squad. Why did they succeed? How did a 14-year-old girl assassinate trained SS officers without being caught for years? The answer lies in the very ideology of the enemy. National Socialism is built on a rigid, patriarchal worldview. In the Nazi doctrine, the role of the woman is defined by the 3 Ks: Kinder, Küche, Kirche. Children, kitchen, church. Women are mothers, wives, and supporters. They are biologically incapable of the cold aggression required for war. Children are even further removed from the concept of threat. This arrogance is the Oversteegen's greatest shield. When an SS officer looks at Freddie, his brain refuses to process the danger. He sees a braid. He sees a skirt. He sees a child. To suspect her would be to admit that the Reich's control is slipping, that the inferior population is rising up in ways the Wehrmacht cannot fight. The Dutch collaborators, the NSB, are even more vulnerable. They are often neighbors who have betrayed their country for power. They are paranoid, constantly looking for the terrorists described on the radio, hardened communists, angry men with scars. They do not look at the girl standing next to them at the tram stop. Freddie exploits this bias with ruthless efficiency. She learns that if she acts silly, if she giggles, drops her bag, or looks confused, the German soldiers will instinctively step in to help. They will carry her bag, not knowing it contains the dynamite that will blow up the railway line they are guarding. She weaponizes their chivalry. She turns their own worldview into the mechanism of their destruction. But as 1944 approaches, the war changes. The Germans are losing on the Eastern Front. The occupation becomes more brutal, more desperate. The velvet glove is long gone. The Gestapo begins to arrest anyone who looks suspicious. The margin for error shrinks to zero. The girl with the red hair is on a wanted list. The sisters are no longer just fighting. They are being hunted. And on a cold morning in late 1944, the hunt leads them to their most dangerous mission yet. Winter, 1944. The hunger winter. The Netherlands is freezing to death. The Germans have cut off food supplies to the western provinces in retaliation for a railway strike. The canals are frozen solid. People are eating tulip bulbs and sugar beets. The trees in the parks of Haarlem have been chopped down for firewood. The city is a skeleton of its former self. In this landscape of starvation and ice, the war between the resistance and the occupiers reaches a fever pitch. There is no more room for subtle sabotage. It is kill or be killed. The target is a high-ranking police officer, a Dutch collaborator who has been ruthlessly hunting down Jewish families, hiding in the attics of Haarlem. He is a man who knows the streets as well as the resistance does. He is dangerous, paranoid, and heavily armed. The intel comes in at dawn. He will be moving his office. He will be vulnerable for a window of barely 10 minutes as he cycles from his home to the local headquarters. Freddie Oversteegen, now nearly 17, but looking no older than 15 due to malnutrition, gets the nod. She pulls on her coat. It is threadbare, offering little protection against the biting wind. She wraps a scarf around her neck. Hiding the pulse that is hammering against her throat, she checks the FN model 1910. It is cold to the touch. The metal bites into her palm. She loads the magazine. 7 rounds. She chambers a round. The safety is clicked off. She wraps the gun in a rough Hessian cloth and places it in the front basket of her bicycle, covering it with a few scrounged potatoes, a prop to explain her presence on the street. She steps out into the biting cold. The air smells of coal smoke and unwashed bodies. She mounts the bicycle. The tires crunch over the hard-packed snow. She is not alone. Truus is shadowing her, riding 50 meters behind, acting as the rear guard. If things go wrong, if there is a patrol, if the gun jams, if Freddie is shot, Truus is the failsafe. But for now, Freddie is the tip of the spear. She reaches the intercept point, a long straight avenue lined with bare elms. It is silent. No cars, no trams, just the wind whistling through the branches. She slows her pace, letting the bicycle coast. She checks her watch. 08:14 a.m. He should be here. Her eyes scan the horizon. A black speck appears against the white snow. A cyclist, moving fast. As the figure gets closer, the details resolve. A heavy leather trench coat, A peaked cap. The flash of a holster on his hip. It is him. The distance closes. 200 meters. 100 meters. Freddie's heart rate spikes, but her face remains a mask of bored exhaustion. She has done this before. She knows the script. She has to time the pass perfectly. She cannot stop. That would be suspicious. She has to ride past him, turn and engage. Or, if the angle is right, shoot him as they cross. He is looking at her. His eyes are cold, scanning her face. He sees a girl with a scarf, struggling against the wind. He looks away. Mistake. They pass each other. The moment the front wheels align, time seems to warp. The sound of the wind vanishes. There is only the target. Freddie brakes hard, skidding slightly on the ice. She puts a foot down to stabilize. Her hand dives into the basket. The potatoes tumble onto the snow. Her fingers close around the grip of the FN 1910. She spins the bike around. The officer is 10 meters away, his back to her, pedaling away, unaware that his death has just made a U-turn. She raises the pistol. Her arm is steady, anchored by 3 years of fear and discipline. She takes a breath. The iron sights settle on the center of the black leather coat. She pulls the trigger. Bang. The sound is not a thunderclap. In the frozen air, it is a sharp, flat crack, like a branch snapping underfoot. The recoil travels up her arm, a familiar jolt. The bullet strikes the officer in the upper back. The impact is immediate. He does not cry out. His body jerks forward, the momentum of the bicycle betraying him. The front wheel twists violently to the left. He goes down hard, the bicycle clattering onto the cobblestones, the metal scraping against the ice with a shriek that sets teeth on edge. Freddie does not wait to see the blood. She does not wait to see if he moves. The rule of the RVV is absolute. Shoot and vanish. She slams her foot onto the pedal. Her bicycle, lighter now without the weight of the dread, surges forward. Behind her she hears the shout. Halt! Stehen bleiben. It is not the officer. It is a patrol. 2 German soldiers, turning the corner at the far end of the street, alerted by the gunshot. They are 200 meters away, but they have rifles. Freddie ducks her head low over the handlebars, making herself a smaller target. A rifle shot rings out, a high-pitched whine that zippers past her ear and chips the brickwork of a house to her right. She banks hard into a narrow alleyway, the tires skidding on the slush. She fights for control, her boots scraping the ground to keep upright. She is in the maze of the Harlem backstreets now, a network of narrow passages she has known since she was a toddler. This is her terrain. She weaves through the labyrinth, left at the bakery, right at the canal bridge, down the pedestrian path where a car cannot follow. Her lungs are burning, the cold air feeling like broken glass in her chest. Every muscle screams. She can hear the roar of a motorcycle engine in the distance. The Gruner Polizei are mobilizing the sidecars. She bursts out of the alley onto a parallel street. Truus is there, waiting at the corner, feigning a broken chain. As Freddie flies past, Truus mounts her bike calmly, blocking the alley entrance for just a few seconds, long enough to confuse a pursuer, before peeling off in the opposite direction. They split the signal. The Germans have to choose a target. They choose neither. The maze swallows the sisters whole. 20 minutes later, Freddie rolls her bicycle into a shed behind a safe house 3 miles away. Her hands are shaking so violently she cannot undo the clasp of her coat. She sinks to the floor, sitting amongst the gardening tools and the smell of damp earth. She is alive. The target is dead. The mission is a success. But as the adrenaline fades, the cold reality floods back in. She is 17 years old. She has just ended a human life. There is no glory in the shed. There is only the ringing in her ears and the knowledge that tomorrow she will have to wake up, braid her hair, and smile at the monsters again. The war is nearing its end. The Allies are pushing from the south. But for the trio, Freddie, Truus, and Hannie, the danger is not receding. It is peaking. The Germans, sensing their defeat, become rabid. They are hunting the girl with the red hair with a singular obsession. And 3 weeks before the liberation, the luck of the trio finally runs out. March 23rd, 1945. The end of the war is visible on the horizon. Canadian tanks are massing near the border. The German occupation is crumbling into chaos. But in this chaos, the danger for the resistance is at its absolute peak. The Nazis are no longer governing. They are purging. Hannie Schaft is cycling through Harlem. She is transporting illegal newspapers. It is a routine run, one she has done 100 times. But today, the routine breaks. She is stopped at a checkpoint. The soldiers search her bag. They find the papers. They find a pistol. They look at her. She has dyed her hair black to hide her identity, but the dye has begun to fade. The red roots are visible in the harsh spring light. The soldiers realize who they have. This is not just a courier. This is das Mädchen mit dem roten Haar. She is taken to the house of detention in Amsterdam. For days, the interrogation is brutal. They want names. They want to know where the Oversteegen sisters are. Hannie says nothing. On April 17th, 1945, 3 weeks before the liberation of the Netherlands, she is driven out to the dunes of Bloemendaal. It is a grey, desolate place of sand and seagrass, used by the Nazis as a mass execution ground. 2 Dutch officials stand with her. The order has come directly from the highest levels. She must disappear. The first shot rings out. It grazes her head, wounding but not killing her. According to the history that has passed into legend, Hannie Schaft looks at her executioner with cold defiance and speaks her final words. Ik schiet beter. I shoot better. The second shot is from a submachine gun. It does not miss. Hannie Schaft is buried in a shallow grave in the sand. She is 24 years old. Back in Harlem, Freddie and Truus are waiting. They wait for the familiar click of the bicycle latch. They wait for the secret knock. The hours turn into days. The silence in the safe house becomes a physical weight. They do not know yet that their third sister is gone. They only know the gnawing, terrible hollow in their stomachs that tells them the trio is broken. When the news finally reaches them, whispered through the underground channels, it shatters them. They have survived the shootouts, the bombings, and the hunger. But they could not save her. The liberation is coming. But for Freddie and Truus, the victory has already been drained of its color. They are alive, but a part of them has been buried in the dunes. May 5th, 1945. The Germans surrender. The Canadian tanks roll into Harlem. The streets explode. The silence that has held the country in a chokehold for 5 years is shattered by cheering, singing, and the ringing of church bells. Flags that have been hidden in floorboards are draped from every window. People dance in the streets, kissing strangers, intoxicated by the sudden rush of freedom. For Freddie and Truus, the celebration is a surreal, alien event. They stand on the edges of the crowd, watching the joy they fought to secure, yet feeling utterly detached from it. While the city celebrates life, their minds are still stuck in the death of the dunes. They are soldiers without a war. They are 19 and 21 years old. but their eyes are ancient. Then comes the second betrayal. As the dust settles and the Netherlands begins to rebuild, the narrative of the war is written. Heroes are chosen. Monuments are built. But as the geopolitical frost of the Cold War begins to set in, the contribution of the communist resistance is inconvenient. The West is now afraid of the Red Menace. The Oversteegen sisters, with their communist upbringing and their ruthless efficiency, do not fit the sanitized image of the Dutch resistance the government wants to project. They are too radical, too dangerous. They are sidelined. While other resistance leaders receive knighthoods and government posts, Freddie and Truus are largely ignored. There are no parades for the girls who lured men into the woods. The government prefers to honor the passive resistance, the paper distributors, the hiders, not the liquidators. Freddie attempts to return to a normal life. She marries. She has children. She tries to build a domestic existence on top of a foundation of trauma. But the war does not leave her. For decades, the trauma manifests in the quiet moments. The sound of a car backfiring, the sight of a uniform, the inability to explain to her neighbors why she cannot simply move on. "We did not murder," she would later say in a rare interview, her voice trembling with the effort to define the indefinable. "We executed. It was a war, but the distinction, clear on the battlefield, is blurry in the peace. The faces of the men she killed, the surprised look in their eyes before the lights went out, visit her in her sleep. She suffers from what we now call PTSD, but back then it was just called nerves. She is a hero who has to hide her heroism because society cannot reconcile the image of a mother with the image of an assassin. It takes nearly 70 years for the silence to break. In 2014, finally, the Dutch government awards Freddie and Truus the Mobilisatie Oorlogskruis, the Mobilization War Cross. Prime Minister Mark Rutte bows his head to the little old lady with the white hair. The recognition is sweet, but it is late. Freddie accepts the medal. She smiles, a faint echo of the smile she used to give the German sentries. But the medal cannot undo the years. It cannot bring back the childhood that was stolen, or the sister who lies in the dunes. Wars are usually measured in miles gained, cities taken, or treaties signed. We look at the maps, and we see the movement of armies. But the true cost of conflict is not found in the archives of generals. It is found in the quiet, unseen spaces where the soul of a nation is tested. Freddie Oversteegen did not just fight a war against the Nazis. She fought a war against her own nature. To save her country, she had to violate the most fundamental law of humanity, that a child is meant to be protected, not weaponized. She was asked to do the impossible. She was asked to look a man in the eye, smile at him, and then end his life. And she did it, not because she was a monster, but because the times demanded a monster to fight the monsters. She sacrificed her conscience so that her neighbors could keep theirs. She killed the little girl inside herself so that the children of the future could play on the streets of Haarlem without fear. Today, if you walk through the Dutch suburbs, you will see thousands of bicycles leaning against brick walls or rattling over the cobblestones. They are vehicles of leisure, of commute, of simple, boring freedom. It is easy to forget that once, in the hands of a teenager with braided hair, this simple machine was the difference between slavery and liberation. Freddie Oversteegen died in 2018 at the age of 92. She lived a long life, but in a way, she never really left the war. she carried the weight of the gun in her basket until the very end. Her story is a terrifying, beautiful reminder that courage does not always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears a skirt. Sometimes it looks like innocence. And sometimes the most dangerous soldier in the war is the one you never see coming. The girl on the bicycle pedaling quietly into the fog of history.